It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. That is Logan Paulsen. I am Craig Hoffman. And the Commanders get the win last night. They do end the streak, but there's a lot more to talk about with Sam Howell playing an entire half. A lot of the offensive starters joining him. The injury to Terry McLaurin shows the risk side of that equation. Plenty of defensive starters played as well, Logan. So plenty to chew on from last night.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, everyone is going to be talking about the streak, and it's cool. I think it is. It's a cool little tidbit that's going to be used in trivia one day. But, in terms of being meaningful or saying the Commanders have arrived, I'm not sure that it's that kind of data point. I think there's other things in the game that are definitely more significant. So, yeah, it's cool. It's fun. I think it's really fun for those kind of back end of the roster guys, that got to do the 2-minute drive, and you got to see Fromm and how absolutely fired up he was on the sideline, and some young receivers making huge plays, offensive line pass protecting. That's huge for those guys, no doubt, because they're going to get a ton of visibility off of that. But, in terms of the grand scheme of things, I don't think it really matters, so.
Yeah, no, not at all. But winning's always better than losing. And I think what was cool is you get a little bit of situational football. You get to see, obviously the threes. But, at the end of the first half, the ones got a 2-minute drive as well. Let's start off big picture, though. Not big picture wins and losses, but big picture strategy. They played a lot more than certainly I think we would have played them if we were in Ron Rivera's position. They played a lot more than I think even people who thought they were going to play were ultimately said, hey, they'll play a couple of series, don't expect much. Sam Howell and company were out there the entire half. Andrew Wiley played one series, but then it was behind the two backup tackles with Leno not dressing. Trent Scott was the guy who got the number 2 call at right tackle. He replaced Andrew Wiley after just one series, and he and Cornelius Lucas held down the fort. I thought the offensive line was very good. The 2 sacks Howell said were on him, and I don't think he's just covering from the O-line there.
No,
but what'd you make of that much playtime against Baltimore's 2s? And knowing that it was going to be against their 2s going in.
Yeah, 43 reps, man. That's a lot of reps in a preseason game for anybody, And so I don't know. I think it's something that I think we wanted. I don't know if we wanted him to play that much, but I think we both acknowledged in the pregame pod that it would be better if Sam did play. And I think this is one of the reasons why. You just get him seeing NFL defenses. You get him working the chemistry with Terry and Jahan and Curtis and again, in some ways, people are oh, it's against the 2s, and I'm one of those people. This isn't real football. This is not what he's going to be seeing on Sundays. But in the same way that you would scale a workout or you scale anything in your life, right, to kind of work up to that elite level of stuff. This is a really nice thing to do and people say, well, why is that, Logan? And for me, one of the things that I think is tremendously valuable is you get the quarterback seeing and going through progressions against a very good defense. It's going to be maybe not quite as good as what he's seeing in practice, not quite as good as what he's been seeing against, in the joint practices. But it does allow him to kind of work the drill in a way that he hasn't been able to work the drill. One year, I remember we did with Mike. What we did is we kind of split the team up in terms of 1s would go against 2s and 2s would go against 1s. 2 offense would go against the 1 defense and vice versa. And we had 2 completely separate practices. And that was the year that I got really good at football, honestly, just because I got more reps. And I think that's what you're seeing with Sam is you're seeing him get more reps against a pretty good defense. And again, the rush isn't going to be what it's going to be. The coverage isn't going to be what it's going to be. But I think those reps are super, super important. And would we have played him that much? Would I have played him that much? Probably not. But again, I think I think Ron understand how important it is for him to get those reps. And I think for his development, it just gives you a confidence going into week 1 that hey man, he's seen it, he's done it, he's looked great, he's looked sharp. And so, yeah, that's kind of my thought on that.
Yeah. They're not as difficult reps as will be, I don't know, Arizona's not very good, but against, the best teams in the league, obviously, against 1s and even against Arizona, these are backups compared to what Arizona's got, which they've got, there's no Budda Baker out there last night, right? But these are all, this is way harder than it was in college. These are the best players in all of college football under NFL defensive coordinator. out there, doing their thing. So this is the hardest game outside of the Dallas game that Sam Howell has probably ever played in, and that's valuable. I think you see the downside. The reason you don't do it is because of the injury, and if McLaurin is out for a while, like, yikes, man, like that's tough. But when we said we wouldn't have done it that much, it was just to mitigate that risk, mitigate that downside. It's not to say that this wasn't valuable. And I think that kind of can get lost in the argument. It's like, oh, well, he's survived. Now you're saying it's good. You said it was, not worth it. And, it's easy to say after the fact when the risk does not, go that direction that, oh, well, you guys were wrong. And it's like, no, the risk was there the whole time. It was just a matter of percentages and you didn't want to end up on the wrong side of it. But now that it's done, now that Sam gets out of this game clean, I think you can definitely talk about the value of these reps and what you saw. And I think what you see, a couple things that really impressed me. Obviously, some of the quick game stuff, gets the ball out quickly, on time, on target. And I love how there's answers in this offense for the quarterback.
Sure.
Aikman regarded on that in the broadcast as well. That, when you watch the Kansas City offense, when you watch this offense, you see the answers there quickly. And I think Sam in those situations did a good job of getting the ball out to the right place. You're locked in on one guy. It's there. You make the throw. If not, you quickly get to the next. And I thought he was good on that. But I think the biggest thing, Logan, for me that I was impressed with was how confident he was in the offensive line. He never panics. And, there are times that he scrambles, but there's times, and like that's the right play. But there are times that he knows pressure is coming and he's like, they're going to pick it up. And often you see quarterbacks, when they know pressure is coming, even if the O-line picks it up, they still feel rushed. They still feel hurried. And there were times last night he's just like, all right, we got it. Like, I'm going to sit back here and let these longer routes develop because now their numbers down on the back end. And some of their bigger plays come against pressure that the O-line and the backs pick up. And Sam's willing to just sit there and let the protection do its thing and dart a ball to someone down the field from the pocket.
Yeah, and I think that's another one of the advantages of working in this situation is because like you get to build a confidence in the O-line. Like just think about how it looked against Cleveland. Obviously, in the first preseason game, like there was a more pressure. We talked about how good the four guys played, and Wiley had a tough outing in terms of giving up a lot of pressure. But even that, like it felt faster. It was the pockets compressed more quickly, and I think that's something you're going to see more probably. Obviously in a regular season game, but one of the advantages here of like ones working against twos is that he gets to sit and trust the protection, know that his guys are going to win one-on-one matchups, and like you said, see the concepts in a way that he can't see them in practice. Then it's very akin to like a 7-on-7 plus. And I think that was one of the advantages for Sam is you get to really feel the protection. The O-line won their matchups. It's not like there's bad rushers out there, but definitely not the guys that we were talking about in practice. Like, Pierce isn't out there. The kid from Penn State isn't out there for them, like Queen and Roquan Smith. None of those guys are out there. So it's going to feel and move a little bit different. It's going to be like, almost in slow motion. And I think that's what you saw is you got to see him kind of execute the offense at a high level. And I think that's something you mentioned the answers within the offense. I think you got to see that. You get to see him work through that, which is something that I think is super important. So, again, like I think this is good. It's good for him to get the reps. And I think, you mentioned that, we were kind of like anti him playing. I don't know if we were anti him playing. What I was anti is that if he was going to play, that all the other starters were going to play. That was something that I was kind of anti. And so, that's why like Terry McLaurin, like you're exposing him kind of unnecessarily. And like you pointed this out, like every time you play football, you're exposing yourself to a certain amount of risk. But I don't know. I think overall, feel good about what Sam did. Feel really good about what the offense did. I think it's important to give it the context that, hey, this isn't the ones. But I think when you look at the performance, you say, man, that's excellent. And I also wanted to give a little bit of context in the sense that how many years have we seen somebody go out and ball in the preseason that struggled in the regular season? So again, this is important. This is like a really good practice. And in terms of informing your decision about Sam, I think it's all positive, right? But it's also important to remember that this is even though it looks like NFL football, it's not quite NFL football yet. So just keep that in mind. I'm not saying Sam's going to be bad or anything like that. What I am saying though is just keep that context and keep that perspective because it's not always going to look like this from an offensive standpoint for this team.
Totally. we've used this phrasing before, but like you can only take the test that's in front of you, right?
Sure, yeah.
There's nothing he could do last night that could make us go like, oh yeah, this guy's going to be great in NFL football, or he's crushing NFL football, because there wasn't regular season NFL football to be played last night. It's just that he had to play preseason, and that's he did a good job of it.
He did a great. He did, and like to be clear, he did excellent. He looked excellent. Like to your point, like didn't I mean, he had the couple like where he kind of there's a pressure, it's empty, he takes a sack. I think he did that twice. Don't love that, but that's him learning as a young football player.
Can we walk through both those sacks real quick? Do you have a good feel for what happened? I know one of them, the slide seemed to go the wrong way.
So let's see if I can remember correctly. On the first one, basically, like it's the same pressure that got him against, or a very similar pressure, not exactly the same. It's the same pressure that got him against Cleveland. And so what they did is they basically brought a 4-man overload to a 3-man slide. So they're in kind of a pseudo. I think it's empty. I don't remember exactly where the back is, but they have a 3-man slide. So the center, Cosme, and the right tackle, I think was Foster at the time, are working to the right. What they do is they take the defensive tackle. They basically pick the center. Right now you have a 2-man slide, and there's 3 rushers coming there. Right, so one of those guys is going to come free, and I think that's something that I'd like to see him get a little bit more comfortable with. Is just understanding like, hey, if we get 2 here, this ball's got to get out, because it seemed to surprise him. Now it came really quick because it's a free runner. It's essentially, we talked about it a lot. It's essentially like at its core principle what Wink Martindale was doing to Scott Turner's offense last year when they played in the second game, or the first game last year in the second half of the year. It's you just find ways to overload the slide, dictate the slide, then overload the slide. And they did that. And like it was a good pressure, and it's the same thing. Like it happened, something similar happened in their blitz period on the Tuesday practice, and Sam threw it away because he identified it. Didn't identify it as quickly here. And so I think that's part of the issue, right? The second sack is
on that one real quick, just the downfield portion. It does look like there wasn't really a great place to throw. I think if he had room to step up, he might have been able to get one to Terry on the second level on that high cross.
So to me, like I'm going to call nonsense on that. Like, so, and again, like, so the way I read it, the way I read the concept is that's like what we would call like a Tony fork concept. So Tony is like a 5-yard out by Jahan in this case, and a clear. So some people call it stick, but like in other versions of the offensive end, they call it Tony. And then on the backside, you have a shallow cross, a mid cross, and then like a basic or a dig by number 1. So you get 3 guys running into your vision. So what I'm going to say is like the first read in that progression is the out. The receiver.
And that one I don't remember seeing on the replay. So if that one was open, that's the one I couldn't see on because they showed the like sky cam from behind replay, and that one was out of vision.
So for me, if that on that out, like the receiver, the receiver, I think it was Gibson to the far right, outside releases, which is exactly right. The corner carries. Jahan doesn't run out of it, which is exactly right. Just throw the ball to Jahan. That's your first read, especially versus pressure. And that's the thing that, again, like where you're identifying like what's going on, like that's good. Get the ball there. I also thought he could have hit the low cross, right? Because the linebacker, it was a zone pressure. So they brought 4 to the offensive right. They dropped the left defensive end out. The middle linebacker had to push to the out route, who is Jahan in this case. So there's a huge void right over the middle of the ball where you can throw to the cross, or if that backside safety starts cutting, which he didn't cut, but like there's a nice window there for Terry too. So I thought he could have hit the out, he could hit the cross, and he could hit the mid cross is what I thought. So to me, it's just like he didn't, and that's something that you do pre-snap. You identify the pressure pre-snap and the ball, and you say, okay, where's my option? And again, you're not saying this is going to be a completed pass, right? It's just, can I get the ball out of my hand?
Right. That's what I was going to say is like, I don't know, especially the stuff over the ball that I feel like I had a better sense of. I got to go back and watch it, admittedly, on the out and in general. But and
it's not
on the
clean,
stuff over the ball.
Clear, it's not super clean.
Yeah.
I'm saying
it's there's
clean.
enough space to get the ball out. Whether it's completed or not is different. And that's what I was going to say is like, you've got to get it, whether it's completed or not, or you throw it at his shoelaces, like you've got to get the ball out. You can't take the sack. And that, that the 100% is time for. It all happens very quickly. There's pressure in the face, but there's enough time to get it at someone's shoes, even if you can't get a completion. And like you said, if you can recognize it pre-snap and you see the good release by Gibson, say on the out, then you should hopefully be able to get a completion.
Yeah, and just to be clear, Gibson's outside releasing on a go, so the corner's going to get wide with that. So there was a pocket there. I thought he could throw to Jahan, who's on the out. But again, like that's one of the things that makes like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees elite is because pre-snap they did such a good job of identifying what the coverage was. I mean, you've seen those clips floating around on Instagram or YouTube where Tom Brady tells the back, "Hey man, it's Tampa 2," like before the ball is even snapped. Hey, I need you to get to. Hey, it's Tampa 2, get out. And like that is what makes Tom Brady super special. That's what made like I remember hearing stories about Peyton Manning or Andrew Luck even identifying blitzes just based on rotations and keys or whatever. I don't even know what they're looking at because it all looks the same to me. But that is the elite ability that says like, okay, we're getting this 4-man overload. Where's my hot? Okay, it's the Tony. Let's get the ball out real quick. Like catch and throw kind of thing. Because we're not going to be protected. There's 4-man rushing to 3 protectors. Like someone will be coming free. Now, I don't know exactly how the O-line's supposed to pick that up. Sometimes you're supposed to squeeze it. Usually you don't squeeze to a slide. Actually, I've never seen anybody squeeze to a slide. But again, I'm assuming the O-line did that correctly. I think that's on Sam. Again, get the ball out. And again, that is something we've talked about a couple times in blitz periods and stuff like that. That has to be the hardest thing for a young quarterback, especially with like these kind of amorphous defenses. Like that's a zone pressure, right? It's very, very complicated. So, and also I want to point this out. If they were prepping this blitz and they knew that was going to happen, like what they would do is that left tackle who's getting the dropper would squeeze down and they could make that a full slide and they could probably pick that up. So again, like if they were game planning this pressure, I don't think it's as big of an issue, but for the preseason game, obviously they weren't able to kind of, work their magic and get it picked up. So,
yeah. Aaron Rodgers also famous for going to the line, walking up to it. And like in the same way, same, demeanor as most quarterbacks point out the mic, he'll just go, "You're blitzing, you're dropping, you're blitzing." And linebackers are just like, "Do I do what he said? Because that's what I was supposed to do. Or do we try to mix it up? Do we?" Oh, damn it. He knows. Second sack seems like everybody slid right. It's a 4-man pressure and a 5-man protection. And someone comes free on the left.
Yeah, that was
outside.
That was literally that one was exactly the same pressure that they got versus Wink Martindale, where they basically run. I'm trying to remember. They had like a true nose, if I remember correctly, and then they bring 2 guys inside the end who's dropping. So when that happens, the guard, so they basically had 3 rushers to a 2-man to the man side of the protection. So we just talked about the slide side where 3 guys are pushing. This one, there was 3 rushers to a 2-man protection. So Cornelius, when he gets that internal rusher, has to squeeze that because it's to the man side. The quickest way to the quarterback is the inside gap. So you protect those up. You leave the outside rusher for the quarterback, like understanding that he's got to identify, hey, I'm hot here, and he just doesn't see it, right? And again, that's a youthful thing. That's something you're not going to game plan as much in this situation. So I'm not going to like crush Sam for not identifying it. But those are the issues, right? Those are the things that come up. They come up in blitz period. They come up all the time. It's hard playing quarterback in the NFL. It's especially hard when you're not prepping for it. So I think the O-line handled both of those about as well as you could handle, and it's up to Sam to kind of say, hey, the ball's got to get out.
Yeah, I will say something that Sam did well on that one, though, is he recognized it immediately post-snap and cocooned. He protected the football. He didn't try to do anything crazy. He's just like, all right, well, I'm dead on this play. Let's minimize the damage. And there's points for that. Sack fumbles, very bad. So at least he gets that credit on that sack. But he said on the sidelines to Lisa Salters and repeated after the game, and apparently he told Ron the same thing, that both the sacks were on him.
Yeah, and I would say yes. Like looking at how the O-line blocked it, look at their rules from training camp. Yes, I would say they're both on him. But again, I would also say that's not entirely true in this sense. If you're prepping these blitzes in the regular season, you will have more answers than what they're doing. We're just like, hey, we're in empty. You got to squeeze this. Sam, figure it out. It's like we might use a dummy cadence. We might use a false cadences are great to show blitzes, right? That allow us to check to a different play or allow us to alert a hot or allow us to get to a different concept. So I just think like it is Sam's fault, but also he doesn't have every tool, every club in the bag available for some of this stuff. So while that is Sam's fault, I think that's part of it. So
yeah, definitely. And that's probably, apologies for the inequitable time on 2 mistakes on a night where he was largely fantastic.
No, yeah.
But the offensive line's been a huge talking point. So, anything in particular stand out other than that offensively with the starters? I think it was great that Terry gets the ball quite a bit. Jahan gets the ball a lot, especially after Terry goes out. I love to see that. Just like philosophically, Eric Bieniemy is like, I don't care whether we've game planned this. Like the way we operate is the ball goes to the good guys. That is very, very nice to see. But anything that Sam, O-line, skill guys that stood out with the starters on offense.
Yeah, I mean, they run this like shallow cross concept that Terry catches 2 balls on, which I'm starting to really like. They used to run mesh all the time here with Scott, and everyone used to crush him for running mesh. Like mesh on principle is a good concept, but obviously they've detailed it up a little bit. So instead of being able to pass the crossers off, they kind of run this like I'm going to pick the linebacker, but then I'm just going to get vertical and find this soft spot in the zone. And Terry catches 2 balls there. I think the protections that EB was running, the chip help, I thought was great. And again, like the chip help here is like, it's like watching someone write their doctoral thesis on chip help. Like, how do I get to it? How do I help the O-line? And how do I make sure I'm maximizing the number of eligibles and letting them get to a route concept that we can run? So like Terry's second catch is basically like hitches, right? It's like 2 hitches by Jahan and Terry, and then like there's a check down over the ball. So I would call that Hank, which is like the most kind of fundamental West Coast concept, right? But instead of like having like, getting in a normal form, like they're in like a normal formation, those guys running the flats can do that with chip help, which I think is great, right? And then like they run a scissors concept later, or what I would call scissors. They might run a dig by number 1 and a corner by number 2. Instead of a post corner, it's a dig corner. And instead of having, like having the flat guy just run a flat, the flat guy chips and gets to the flat. It's Curtis Samuel, and it really opens the concept up. So I just think they just do a great job of understanding how to help the O-line, how to maximize protection. I thought the backs did a pretty good job in that. I mean, obviously on one of the pressures in the 2-minute drill, Brian Robinson gives up a pressure. Sam escapes it, gets Jahan for the completion. Great job. But early on, great pickup. Alex Arma had a great pickup on like this, what I would call a pick stunt with a linebacker in the center. Does a great job kind of saving the day on that. So I think the protection was great. The protection philosophy was great. I thought the individual matchups in the protection were great. So I think that's something that I just want to call attention to is like, everyone talks about the O-line and how they struggled last year. And I think a lot of that struggling came from the fact there wasn't like a nuanced protection plan. And here we are in the second preseason game. There's not a ton of game planning in, and there's a very nuanced protection plan already, kind of allowing guys to be in better situations. And you can tell they rep it, and guys know exactly what to do in certain situations for certain blitzes. So I thought that was really cool. And again, like in terms of route concepts, they're not running anything overly complicated, but, Jahan's second catch, of the 2-minute drill, it's like this big out. And instead of running into coverage, like one of the great features of this offense is he can just sit down right there and catch that ball, And so finding touches, finding space, Terry did that a couple times. I thought was great. So, and I also, again, I'm kind of rambling, the tempo with which they operated really also positively affects pass protection because the guys on defense, you could tell, were a little bit fatigued. The offensive line was very fresh. So I really just love the whole philosophy and how they got to certain runs. And again, it's against the 2s, so it's not perfect, but I just wanted to highlight some of that stuff real quick.
Yeah, 36 completions on the night in total between the 3 quarterbacks, all whom are well over 50% in terms of completion percentage. But I mean, this is impressive. Like Jahan, 5 for 76, Terry, 3 for 39. Diami 2 for 27, Turner 2 for 24, and those guys all just played a half. Terry obviously a little bit less with the injury right before the half. So those types of numbers. I mean, Jahan gets 7 targets in the half. Yeah, and I think that we've been obviously on this podcast we've been captains of the Jahan's going to lead the team in receptions bandwagon because we talk about how well this offense fits him, and it just is on display last night. You see the intentionality in getting those guys the ball, and they're not even game planning for it yet. Like you're not getting the game plan, touches where it's the jet sweeps or the little touch passes or things like that, where they're going to automatically guarantee Curtis Samuel a touch, Terry McLaurin a touch, Jahan Dotson a touch. We haven't seen a wide receiver screen yet in the preseason. So there's a lot more on the plate, I think, for this offense, obviously. Down roster, anything stand out? Unfortunately, if I think of like fourth quarter type of stuff, I mean, the third quarter with Jacoby was a little bit of a mess. But fourth quarter, Curtis Hodges has a couple of opportunities. Not good for him. Mitchell Tinsley gets a couple of opportunities. They're tougher than Hodges for sure, but he had an opportunity, I think, to like really say like, I'm in this receiver battle, and has a couple of tough plays that he doesn't make. And unfortunately, it was that kind of night and for some of the individuals. But as a team, they're able to put it together and keep going, keep fighting. And ultimately, obviously, they drive down and Sly kicks the field goal for the win. So second half down roster, whether it's continue of the schematic stuff or any individuals that showed up in good or bad ways. Anything else to comment on the offensive side of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Jake Fromm deserves a ton of credit. Like, that's tough, being out there in the third quarter with the third offensive, or the fourth quarter with the bottom of the roster offensive line. Thought that those guys did a great job, like that offensive line group. Jones Smith, he's been playing guard all camp. He's playing right tackle in this game. Braden Daniels, I thought, did a really nice job against number 48. I don't know who 48 is. He might not be playing football here in a couple of weeks, but good job, Braden Daniels. Like, looked the part, very sound in protection. You mentioned Mitchell Tinsley. I thought he had some tough kind of targets, and same thing with Curtis. Like, so let's just give that some context. Like, that corner route that he's running, like, that is a tough catch that Curtis is running, right? Just like the fade that Tinsley's running, right? Like, Tinsley gets two hands on his, so I think it's probably more likely he should catch that, I would say. But I think, he made a nice two contested catches on like kind of short underneath stuff like a stick and then a sit over the ball. So good job, Tinsley. Didn't make that elite play, but good to see. Casimir Allen, I thought, did a great job on his one catch. Just kind of, it was a tight window throw. Good job making that catch. Everyone's been talking about his lack of polish as a receiver. And I think that's probably getting a little bit overblown now, personally. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's not a bad receiver. You know what I mean? He's actually been fairly productive in training camp practices. It's just about he's not as polished as Mitchell Tinsley, who is, again, Casimir Allen converted from running back to receiver. He's still growing at the position. Not bad, but Tinsley's played receiver for his whole life, basically. So he's a little bit more polished. A guy that I'm super fired up for, honestly, and I've been a fan of his since camp started, and I'm really glad to see him get some touches, is Bryson Tremaine. I thought he just did a great job, man. And it's on one of the punts, he's getting double viced. He beats double vice. So for a guy that played gunner in college to show that gunner ability in a preseason game, great job. The route nuance to draw the holding call, great job. The physicality on the hitches to kind of fight for the first down, great job. The dig over the middle, jumping up, catching that football, great job. So he's a guy that I've been waiting to kind of see get some touches in the preseason because I like his professionalism. Like, if he's not the first guy out to practice every day, he's damn close. Like, he is a guy that has just been handling himself really well. And he's like Logan. I'm in the Bryson Tremaine fan club. So it's a little bit of confirmation bias. I know that, but to see that, I thought was really, really good for him. A guy that's just been handling his business and approaching this the right way. Good for him. So, and the fact that they get the drive that wins the game is good for that entire group, because everyone's going to be talking about it. Everyone's going to be watching it. Everyone's going to show those plays. And ultimately that's great for those guys getting on rosters and getting on teams. So I think that whole group wins, because I don't think anybody played poorly. And the offensive line and the backs, man, I know Christian Rodriguez fumbled, I know whatever, all that stuff, but for them to be getting basically all out pressured, on 5 consecutive plays in the fourth quarter on the last drive of a preseason game, and for there not to be catastrophic mental mistakes, great job.
Big time.
Great job for that group. So
yeah, I mean, that's such a great point, because at the end, Baltimore is trying to get them, they're trying to either force a turnover or get a sack and get them back out of field goal range, protect the streak. They live forever. Nope.
Yeah.
They're trying to game situation, get a loss of yards or get the ball back. And Fromm is able to deliver a couple of really nice balls where only his guys can get them. And, we talked about Tinsley and Hodges, some really tough attempts that they're not able to haul in. But those are safe throws where you give your guy a chance to make a play, hard plays, elite plays, but at the very least, like, you're not turning the football over and you're not taking the sack. And then they're able to get some of that shorter stuff, get the field goal a little bit easier, and then Sly comes on and bangs it home. But you're right, there was like 5 straight downs where they got 7 at the line of scrimmage and they're bringing all of them. It's impressive stuff from that group. And by the way, it's nice momentum for them because they're going to carry that into the final game where they're going to play the entire thing. And so I think now that confidence, like, again, whether it's here or somewhere else, like, there's going to be some guys that make rosters, or at the very least keep their practice squad jobs, elevate themselves to the top of that list, and set themselves up for future NFL careers based off of what happened here, and hopefully rolling that into the final game of the preseason.
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of long story short, I was just really impressed with that whole group, and I know there were some misses, and I think the most frustrating play of that for me, because I like Curtis Hodges, I think that we talked about this a little bit off air, is his potential is so high. You're just waiting for him to kind of fall into his own potential. And so obviously he has the catch in the one-on-one situation with the corner. Great. I think he had 2 of those. Then he has the drop. On the drop is probably tough, but like the 50-50 ball in the corner, I get that. You don't catch that. That's a tough catch. The one that really kind of, I was like, ugh, come on, man, was when Fromm escaped. Do you remember this play? He escapes the pocket. He misses like 2 sacks, is out there, and then kind of lofts the ball up to Hodges, who is like wide open. And again, that could be a better throw for sure, but it kind of just kisses off his fingertips. I'm like, that's the one. That's the play. If you're trying to make the roster, if I'm going to circle one of those plays, because I actually thought he did a good job in the run game, that's the one that you got to make, because it just separates you. You just say, okay, he's making plays for us. He's doing some stuff that we haven't seen him do in training camp. But instead, it kind of falls into the same narrative. Like, did he play bad? No. Did he play good? No. He's somewhere in that kind of vanilla middle that just kind of is like, huh. Unlike a guy like Bryson Tremaine, who, did he do anything spectacular? No. But when they threw him the ball, he caught it. And with his opportunities, he was physical in the run game. And with his opportunities on special teams, he made plays. So it's just like, when the opportunity to make plays came, one guy made plays and one guy didn't. And I think that is kind of what you were alluding to with some of that stuff.
Yeah, and same thing for Tinsley, right? Like, the opportunities are there to go out and make a play. It's not like you're getting downgraded for not making something great, but like, you could have, and that probably elevates your chances tremendously. Anything to comment on for that second group? Brissett throws the interception that's behind Bates.
That was a weird interception.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if Bates should have sat down there, because he's open, the ball whizzes right by him, but he's not really looking for it. I don't know. It was definitely a weird interception, and Brissett looked pretty ticked off afterwards. So I'm not exactly sure what the miscommunication was there. But all in all, like, that group was not super productive.
Yeah, not super productive. And there are times in practice where Brissett kind of, you feel like he's just like kind of playing open court basketball. Like, he's going down to the local YMCA, and he's just kind of trying stuff out. And I felt like there was a little bit of that from him, like where he does something, he escapes in the pocket, he makes an excellent throw, and you're like, wow, that's pretty elite. But he kind of is doing that too much. And you're just like, hey man, like, let's just do normal stuff here. Like, I love the high end stuff because that's elite stuff, but also, like, let's just throw that hitch and, like, let's make that look really easy, because you did that in the Cleveland game, and obviously it elevated in a nice way. So I thought that was kind of one of the things. I thought there wasn't really a ton of opportunity for that group. It was weird.
No, they didn't play a ton. The way the timing worked out, yeah.
Yeah, they only had, I want to say maybe it was like 10 plays. It was 2 drives. The other one is, I want to talk about this for a second, is Chris Rodriguez. Because I think he, outside of the fumble, had like a really, really good game.
Yeah.
And one of the things I love, EB in the production meeting a couple weeks ago was basically like, if a back fumbles or a receiver drops the ball, like, I'm going to come right back to you and give you an opportunity. And so he has that fumble, which was a bad fumble. You know what I mean? Like, he's standing up, ball comes out, whatever. But the very next play, he gets a touch. And it's not like I'm nervous and tiptoeing through. It's like, I'm the anvil, or I'm the hammer, you're the nail. Boom. And that was kind of how we ran the rest of that series. And so, respect that he came back and did that at a high level. I thought Brissett was good, but again, there was a little bit too much whatever that was for me. Like, just do normal stuff. at a high level.
Just operate.
Just
Rodriguez,
operate.
5 carries, 31 yards, so a 6.2 average again for him. He just looked good outside of the fumble. And fumbles happen. Hopefully not a habit of them. That's when it becomes a problem. But again, tough running. Had a couple of good pass pro pickups as well.
He's a good football player.
Yeah,
I like him a lot. Yeah.
He is. They did a good job with him.
A guy that in that second group that we got to shout out is Stromberg. Like, holy cow, man. Like, I did not think he could play guard in the NFL. I didn't think so. And he has been, I don't want to say a better guard, but he's flashed more at guard than he has at center in pass protection and in the run game. Just his get off and his quickness. He reminds me of like a poor man's Chris Lindstrom. And Chris Lindstrom is like a Pro Bowl guard, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Because he's quick, he's aggressive, he's got the right kind of physical mindset. So I think, since he started playing guard, he's just getting better and better at the position. And he's a guy that, we were talking like, can he play guard in a pinch? I don't know. It's like, man, I think he might be better at guard. So I think that is a huge step for him, and a guy that I think is definitely, he was going to be on the roster because he's your 3rd round pick, but is playing his way onto the roster. Does that make sense what I'm saying there? Like,
I mean, he's probably playing his way into being active on game day.
Yes, there we go. That's a better way to put it. Yeah.
So he's playing his way up the roster, I guess. Correct. Is probably the best way to put it. He was already above the cut line, but where are you actually going to be? Are you going to be the last guy that makes it and you're just inactive? No, he's maybe playing his way up a little bit. Since we're talking guards, what'd you make of Sadiq and Chris Paul? It looks like this is Sadiq's job, which is crazy considering the way we felt a couple weeks into camp. But they just keep going back to Sadiq, and he seems to have leveled out, and like that's ultimately a good thing.
Yeah, and I think Sadiq's like, again, he's not a bad player. It's just like he's not healthy all the time. And I think, they really like his athletic upside. And when you look at like the numbers on paper, he's a freak, man. He's an athletic freak, I had somebody that I'm very close with who knows Sadiq, and he was like, he's like that Trent Williams kind of athlete. And I don't know if I'd go that far. This guy's being maybe hyperbolic, but if you look at his numbers, he ran a 4.8. He's got a pretty good vertical he's an explosive, twitchy.
Yeah. You could be a great athlete without being Trent Williams. Like Trent, when you can stand underneath the rim and do a 360 between the legs dunk at 340 pounds, as Adrian Peterson told me that Trent Williams used to do at the rec center at University of Oklahoma, then you can be a Trent Williams athlete. I don't think Sadiq Charles is doing that, even if he's a phenomenal athlete by any other standard.
Right, but like to get even to be used in the same sentence, I think is kind of what I'm speaking to, like that level of athleticism. And so I think some people might have seen him give up a pressure like that was not on him. The tight end ran into his back as he's trying to get out into his route and bumps him off the protection. But I think he had a very solid game. Chris Paul had a solid game. It's funny with Chris Paul, I think you see some of his like inexperience. Inexperience is probably the wrong word, just like lack of football, like high level football IQ. Like he doesn't totally understand the right angles all the time, doesn't totally understand where he should be in the slide. And he's light years ahead of where he was last year. And he's a guy that we think could probably play a lot of meaningful minutes for this football team and when deserves to. And it's crazy to me that he still has these areas to improve and he's still playing that well. You know what I mean? So he had a good game. I thought there was a couple things here and there, like little things like I'm describing, like sitting on a double team a little too long, like messing up the defensive lineman and the linebacker makes the tackle. Like those are things that come with experience and repetitions, but I thought they both played really well, and Nick Gates, man, had one of my favorite plays of the day. And it got a personal foul on it, but I love this like mindset, like Gibson's like fighting at the end zone for a touchdown. Right. And big, what is he? 63, 53, 63, comes over and just waylays the pile. Now you can't do that anymore. Like that was something that when I first got in the league was like, that used to be like standard operating procedure. If you were standing near a pile, tight ends, offensive linemen, we would like beat it on you and you would just get smoked. Like if you were facing me, I could dive over the pile and hit you. And that was like a rule. And so it was a rule.
Probably good that's not legal anymore.
I agree. Like you remember like John Runyon used to do that all the time. Anyway, so so they're around the pile and it wasn't quite that egregious where people are standing around the pile and someone gets hit. But he comes over and like delivers a vicious block on a guy who's trying to tackle Gibson in the end zone. And again, he got a personal foul, whatever, but I like that mindset. I like that mindset in the offensive line, in that room of guys that are going to strain to finish. because good offensive line play is about straining to finish, and having your center, who's like the captain of that group by default because they do all the communication, kind of embody that mindset, I think is going to pay dividends long term for this team.
The guy that he smoked was our Darius Washington, who's the guy who hit Cole Turner late and started the fight on day one.
There we
so
go.
That might have also
there.
been a little intentionality in terms of who he locked in on. What did you make of Sam Cosmi's gritty as all of that was happening in the background?
That was so funny. I was watching that live and I was just laughing at myself because Sam is over by himself doing the gritty, and everyone's in this tussle. Terry's on the ground scrapping with somebody, pushing people off the pile, trying to bail out the fight. And Sam, I don't know if Sam was gassed. He looked pretty gassed. It's just doing the gritty totally solo while there's like this little mini war going on. I thought that was the perfect amount of comedy for that moment.
It was a perfect scene. You can't write it better because it's like, what's more insulting? Nick Gates smoking the dude or Cosmi behind the plate just, doing his thing.
Just doing his little hop around. That was pretty funny though, for sure. And he had a great game too. So Lucas had a great game. Cosmi had a great game. Really but yeah, that was so funny, dude. So funny.
Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. Logan Paulsen there, Craig Hoffman here. All right, let's get into the defensive side of it. Again, starting at the highest level, they play Forbes. They play the linebackers. Every other defensive starter out. I actually think that was the right play. Forbes, whatever, hit or miss. I think the linebackers needed the reps. And they played like players who need the reps. The middle of that defense, man, I don't think that was a particularly good day for the second level, up or down the depth chart.
Yeah. Let's talk about the linebackers, I guess. So I would say that I like the way Jamin is playing. I like the mentality that he's playing with. Could technically he be better with some of the stuff? Yes. But there's that, they're backed up. And they run that ISO with who's that big fullback that they got there? Ricard. And he absolutely chins Ricard. And so I'm like, I like that from Jamin. I like that physical, aggressive snap to the football, right? And I think that, he had a pursuit where the ball breaks contained on a little screen pass and he runs it down and delivers a big hit. It's a different kind of player than we saw even last year, even late in the year, a guy who's playing a little bit more confident. And I think that's good for Jamin. I think that in terms of where the linebackers are at, I'm a little bit less concerned with where he's at just because I think he's playing with a confidence and a physicality. Is he always doing the right thing? No. But the thing that used to really bother me about Jamin is that if he didn't know, he'd play really slow. And now I feel like even if he doesn't know, he's playing like his hair is on fire. And I think that's a good thing for this defense and a good thing for this group. That being said, I think Cody Barton is a guy that I have been a little disappointed with over the course of the last two preseason games. And not because I don't think he's a physical football player, but for example, they're running Tampa 2, right? In that kind of sequence, I think it's right before the offense has the 2-minute drive, right before the interception. What's his name? Quan. By Quan. Yeah, right before Quan's interception. And they're running Tampa 2, and you used to play safety, Cody. And the fact that
I've never played safety in my life outside of some pickup football, but I was all right at it.
And the fact that they were able to kind of attack that seam, and I felt like they isolated him. They had those 2 balls completed to Charlie Kolar, their backup tight end. I was like, man, that's something I thought would be better from him. And he had the same thing happened. I think it was in the first preseason game against Cleveland too, right? It's like that you're here to kind of carry that tight end vertically. And the fact that they're able to complete a football there, I think, is kind of largely on you. And so do I think he's a bad football player? No, but, week 1 against Cleveland, we had some errant run fits. Those got better this week, I thought. Those were much better. So in terms of improvement, that's great. But I just thought we'd be getting more from him. The team would be getting more from him from a coverage standpoint. And again, it's the preseason. Guys get better. His improvement from week 1 of the preseason to week 2 in the run fits was astronomical. I'm expecting the same improvement, but that's something I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on kind of as training camp finishes up and as week 1's kind of, is right around the corner.
Yeah, I think Barton was particularly not good. And
we got to be careful because, again,
I mean,
we're not saying that we could play linebacker better than Cody Barton. We understand that it's
but
very hard.
That's not my job. My job is to talk about how he played. And
I know, but I was a player, and I always hated when dude with the microphone was like, "Oh, Cody Barton's terrible." It's like,
I'm not saying he is terrible. I'm saying he did not play well.
Yes, okay.
And that is, if he doesn't want me to say that, he can play better. And that's just unfortunately that's the job. And
I get it.
The tape is the tape. And don't be worried about me saying it. Worry about Jack Del Rio saying it. Worry about Ron Rivera saying it, right?
Yeah.
And so that doesn't mean that I don't think he can get better and learn, and that there weren't potentially reasons why. I mean, the job's a lot harder when, all due respect, whoever was in front of him was in front of him. That wasn't John Allen and Deron Payne and Montez Sweat and Chase Young. And they brought him in, and they didn't invest as much in that position because they knew they had those 4 guys in front, and that's going to make their jobs a lot easier. But there's also there's the big run that goes to the left, and it's when Quan gets up in the backfield, running back gets inside of him, Wild Goose loses contain, but the running back's on the sideline and Barton's still standing where he started the play in the middle of the field, and you're just like, what are you looking at, man? And so there's stuff like that from a recognition standpoint that you're like, a little slow in the cover 2 drops, a little slow in diagnosing the runs, where you're like, that processing speed's got to be faster for him if they're going to be successful on the second level this year. And that's ultimately what I'm saying. It's not to trash a dude. It's just like, hey, the bar of success is here, and the performance was underneath it.
No, I agree. And I think that's kind of, again, we pointed that out in the Cleveland game. Here it is again now. And again, on that play, Wild Goose has to make a better play on that. Talk about guys who had a they wish they played better. I think Wild Goose would be in that category.
Yes.
But yeah, I think you see physically Cody's talent, right? You see his athleticism. I think that, to your point, the recognition, the ability to attack the football, the ability to be a little bit more decisive is something that I would like to see from him. And again, maybe this is something, again, I need to talk to somebody in the building about. Maybe learning linebacker in this system is more challenging than we want to give it credit for, because there does seem to be a slow burn type process at that position. Jamin, obviously, Cody now, so
100%.
We'll see how that. And again, I've heard from people around that there is a lot on those guys' plates with regards to run fits and coverage responsibilities, and they have to know a lot and a lot of variation, or that's how it was last year. So, we'll see as he gets more comfortable intellectually with the defense, if he starts playing a little bit faster, which I would assume he would.
No, I agree. And having Cam Curl behind him as the key communicator, a guy who got the green dot at one point last year, that is going to make a huge difference. So again, to be perfectly clear and fair to Cody Barton, he's one of 3 starters out there, and some of the guys, literally every other guy around him would have made his job a lot easier by the nature of how that position is in this defense, but the performance is what it is. I think generally speaking, they just gave up a ton of yards up the middle of the field in cover 2, especially. How many passes, and I think both the tight end touchdowns, if I'm remembering correctly, are balls up the middle against cover 2 safeties, or against a too high look, and it's right over the top of that linebacker who should be dropping if it's Tampa 2. And, those 2 safeties, they've got a lot of ground to cover, and there's that sweet spot in the middle that if you can attack it, and the Ravens did a good job of it. And it's one of those things where I'm like, I don't know how concerned we should really be, because none of the guys who will be playing it are out there at that point in the game, those second half touchdowns that they give up. But to see a team attack something so consistently, and that did start in the first half with guys like Barton out there, is obviously, you'd wish they can only take the test ahead of him, to go back to our phrase from earlier, but they didn't pass it at really any point in the game with that particular coverage and in that area of the field.
Yeah, and again, it's you always wonder. I always go back to this in the preseason, how much did they actually prep? There's been times in practice where they've had some really slick cover 2 disguises, Tampa 2 disguises, because if the quarterback identifies it as Tampa 2, everyone and their mom knows where the weakness of that is. It's the middle linebacker carrying the vertical, right? So if I can identify it, great. And they've just done such a nice job in practice of disguising it and making it harder for the quarterback to identify when they're in that coverage. And it's made the quarterback hold the ball, and they've been able to make a ton of plays. So, how much are they prepping? How much are they scheming? How much are they, that's another thing. Like when you're playing coverages, you game plan route concepts. So how much are they doing that? And my guess would be probably not that much. So it's not going to, defense, I think, is always going to look a little bit less dynamic in the preseason unless they put more in, right? Like Baltimore had some interesting pressures in. I thought that was, again, they didn't run that as much as I probably would have thought they would have run it if this was a regular season game. But just like that with the defense, like how much do they have in? Are they bringing any pressures? Are they running two coverages? Because it doesn't seem like there's this great diversity of coverage shell in the preseason, which is one of the things that I think Jack in season does a really nice job of, is kind of making all of these coverages look the same with slightly different rules for each guy, which make throwing windows a little bit smaller, which make the quarterback hold the ball a little bit more. So again, I don't think you're getting that from this group the same way.
Definitely. Secondary, we mentioned Wild Goose, really rough night for him on the outside, to the point that I got questions about his, and it sucks because he's a guy that's played well in the nickel. Yeah. They've continued to push him in games to the outside and be like, hey, man, prove that you can be versatile. As you're going to be at the end of the roster, you got to be able to do multiple things because we're going to need you to fill in wherever the hole is. And it's not, it's not just like, oh, yeah, the nickel's out, we're good with Goose. Like, no, if there's an outside corner out, you got to prove that you can do it, a la Danny Johnson has over the course of many, many years, which is why Danny's been able to stick around. And I think when I do my roster projection later on the day on the show, like, unfortunately, I think he's a guy that might be on the outside looking in. Yeah. As he had another rough one for the second straight game in the preseason.
Yeah, and I feel bad because, I've had rough preseason games, and I've known what it means for me moving forward. So, I think he'd probably want some of those plays back. They were kind of picking on him on that drive for the touchdown where they scored. Yeah. And I actually thought, that was really close to me. I don't know if you saw the touch.
I actually thought that was incomplete. Because he was bobbling it all the way down, barely has it, and then Wild Goose knocks it out. At first I was like, what are you doing the incomplete sign? And then you watch the replay and you're like, oh, man, I thought he knocked that out.
Yeah. So, to his point, I think that's a really competitive down. That's a great throw by the quarterback there. And I think, that's awesome that he's able to kind of, as he's falling down, punch that ball out before the guy even, takes a step. So, we're crushing him a little bit, but I think that was not a bad play, honestly. And I think if that's regular season, you probably get a challenge on that. But I did think there was the run fit thing that was, I didn't think that was very good. And then, obviously the two plays prior to that where, were PI. But again, that's tough. So,
so there's one other play that I wanted to ask you about with him though. And it leads to the other guy that we need to talk about, which is Quan. Yeah. On the Quan interception, which if there's not pressure, is it probably a touchdown?
Great job by Benny. By
100%. And look, coverage, you don't just get to say no, it was an interception because the pressure got there. So the defense helps other parts of the defense out. But Quan is in part behind because he and Wild Goose bump into each other in combination coverage. And on the first drive, the touchdown is Zay Flowers. There's a problem in combo coverage with Quan as well. I know it's going to be really hard to definitively diagnose any of that, but obviously if you're Quan Martin and you're going to be playing that nickel spot, playing in combination against stacks and bunches and things is a pretty important skill set. So what do we make of how he bounced back? I mean, the mental competitiveness to fight back into that play and make the interception, get a great return out of it. It felt like a major turning point. Hopefully it is for him. Sure. But what do we make of Quan's night and how that combos with, Wild Goose to wrap up him?
Yeah, so I think I actually thought that play by Quan wasn't terrible, on the interception. I think that's okay. There's the offense is running that play to create traffic. So the fact that you get through, you stay with the down, the ball's a little off, and you're able to make a competitive play where the receiver bobbles it. Great, really, really nice play. And I think as he gets more confident and more aware, he'll understand, they're going to try and pick me here. So I think that's a plus play. I thought the touchdown to Zay Flowers, I think that's on him. So what they were doing is basically they, they're in a bunch. They're in this tight bunch. There's two receivers over there. The inside guy runs vertical. And so Quan, I think, is okay, I need to take number 2, which is that guy, vertical. But the way that the corner's playing it makes me think that if 2 goes vertical, he has it. If 1 goes to the flat, then Quan would then match the flat, who in this case is Zay Flowers. So I think that is probably a bust by Quan, in terms of mental capacity. And again, that's one of those things we're talking about where, just like in the Cleveland game, like he has not repped exclusively at nickel. Like he has played safety. He's played both safety spots. He's played Buffalo nickel. He's played all over the defense. And so that's where like just honing in on those rules versus specific looks. And again, we're like game plan prep probably makes all the world difference for him. So I think that's probably his fault. But I don't know. So you'd have to ask him about it. I would say it's his fault. But I think like that type of stuff, I would assume gets better and gets cleaner as they prep more and as he kind of hones in on one specific spot.
Yeah. All right. Anything else defensively? Defense, the notes are kind of light. We went for like 40 minutes on offense, and we're going to give the defense 15 here because the starters actually played for the offense. But anything else from the defensive side of the ball that's worth touching on?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really think it was like the cleanest day of all time for the defense. I thought on the whole they kind of had I don't want to say a bad day, but it was just kind of like a C kind of day. You know what I mean? Nothing great, nothing too terrible. They had the great pick, but I mean, on the whole, it was just kind of like, there was a lot of surge there from Baltimore. Baltimore felt like they kind of were in control. But again, like one of the things this staff has kind of said is like, we want more turnovers. And I think you see the value of turnover creations and what that does for your offense when you're able to get that done. Like it doesn't need to be a perfect day because you're just giving your offense more bites at the apple. And I think that maybe is a positive coming out of this is like, hey, they did get a turnover on a pretty competitive play by Quan. But I think on the whole, there's a lot of stuff where you're like, man, that could have been better. That guy could have taken on that double team better. That Andre Jones had a solid day. Like he had some nice pressures on Falele for them, number 77, the left tackle, who is kind of their swing guy. And I thought to myself, like, that's good. I don't know how engaged Falele was. He looked like he was asleep half the time out there. But, you gotta. What is your thing? You gotta take the test.
Yeah, take the test. That's in front of you.
So you did
sleeping tackle. Go get him.
Yeah, go get him. That's exactly right. So I think he deserves a shout out. I thought James Smith-Williams had a great day. I thought he had.
How about James with the hustle on the special teams play?
Yeah, hustle on the special teams play, getting the ball down there. That was great. Then,
I want to get that dive in slow motion and just be like, James, look at the grace of you, sir.
Yeah, look at how athletic you are, right? And then I think he had like a sack or a tackle for loss, tackle for loss, like the next player, a tackle beating the tight end. Casey Tuhill, I thought played well, good energy. Those guys, we expected them to play well. I thought they played well. And then, other than that, like outside that defensive line rotation, I'm not sure there's a lot to be like super excited about. Percy, I thought showed good hustle at times, running down the quarterback on his own read. But those are the kind of plays you're picking out, or like these very select, like, oh, this guy made a good effort here, this guy made a good effort there. But as a whole, I thought the defense just kind of, didn't look great. They felt like they were kind of asleep on the first drive of the game where they scored the touchdown. But they got the win. They did enough to win, and I think that that's important.
Yeah, the one great play from Forbes flashing in the run game, that was great. But again, like one play here, one play there does not make for an excellent performance. Defense definitely felt like it did not have a good day, but they got the win.
But not a bad day. It wasn't a good day, but it wasn't a bad day. And I think
they did bow up for a couple 3-and-outs, and those are easy to forget because they happen so quickly. But they matter tremendously.
And I will say this:
it puts a tired Baltimore defense back on the field quickly, and the offense was able to take advantage of that stuff. So they did give up these long sustained drives, but then they would bounce back and be like, all right, we're good, we're done, we're out of here, and then the offense could go down and score.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note they were only on the field for 22 snaps in the first half compared to 43 for our offense, so there is something there to that point where they were able to get off the field when they had to. It didn't, and I will say, when you're watching this defense generally, there's times where it doesn't look good. And you're like, oh man, like that first down run got 5 yards. Oh, incomplete pass on second down. It's 3rd and 5. Oh, the batted ball. Oh, they're punting. Oh, okay, great. And I felt like that's kind of how the defense operates at times, where it's not always super clean, but they are effective. And I felt like maybe they fell into that a little bit in the first half, made enough plays to get them to punt the ball, to your point, and then they made the big play on the interception. So, I think we're kind of hemming and hawing, but I think our standard and our expectation for the defense is very, very high.
That's true. And it was a boomer bust day, which is not, I think, what we expect for this defense when the best players are out there. But it was, they give up 6-play touchdown drive, 3 and out. They get the pick after giving up a 10-play drive, 2-play drive for a touchdown with the penalty in there, end of half, and then give up a touchdown on the first play, 10-play, 85-yard drive, 3 and out again, touchdown, 3 and out, 4 and out, and then the pick at the end of the game. So very boomer bust kind of day, but that is what it is. Last but not least, because I'm on long snapper duty, yikes, man. Cheese, rock skipping one back there. I have not had a chance to do any reporting on this yet, but I'm putting it on myself to do it. And it does not look like Rivera was asked about this after the game, but they have got to bring in competition and see who can win a snapper's job. Or like, I don't know, man. I don't know how hard it is to revert to your old technique where you didn't bounce them back there. And I hate that sounded like harsh and mean and like I'm yelling at Cameron Cheeseman, but like long snapper's just not a position that you should have to worry about. And there's too many good ones out there. It's a positional overload in the NFL. You have a million dudes who snapped in college who did just fine. And I don't know what makes I guess the timing on the stopwatch is what makes like an NFL long snapper, but he was a good NFL long snapper for 3 years. And then he changed the technique thing. And now he's got snaps that are all over the place. And that's not going to work. Tress Way, an absolute G to get that ball down.
It's weird. Like I'd be interested to just ask him why he felt the need to change. Because it's like your golf swing. It's like if you've got a good swing and got a good groove. Like I'm speaking from experience. I did a little snapping in the NFL, and that it's the second I felt like I didn't have the same grip or the approach wasn't the same. I felt like I was totally out of the zone. So it's weird.
I don't know, man.
I would be interested to ask him. Like that'd be an interesting one-on-one. Like why did you feel like you needed to change it?
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see how my schedule goes on Thursday. See what I'm hoping to get a sit-down interview, and if I can also get Cheeseman outside of the sit-down, then we'll see. But yeah, that's all I got for you on the long snapper. But Pilardi, nice day punting. Hopefully he gets a job somewhere.
Good job, for him, man. And that's so good.
What's up with them, by the way, signing Tress Way backup punter so Tress doesn't have to kick in the preseason and then having them wear number 0?
Yeah. Dude, it's a cool... I don't know. It's cool that they get to come in and audition. It's cool they get a cool number.
Yeah,
and it's cool that they both punted well, So
yeah, no, great for them. What's up with the number 0 thing? It's kind of wacky.
I'm in on it. I like it.
Yeah, no, I am too. I just think it's funny, and there's also only so many numbers available. They got a 90-man roster right now. Yeah, punter. And you
honestly, you probably don't want duplicate. Like that's probably what it is. You probably don't want a duplicate number. So it's really easy to just be like, hey, punter, take 0, and then we don't have like 2 10s on the field at the same time. So
right. All right. I think that's all. There's not a lot of special teams talk other than that. Kaz had the one good return. That was really the only return on the day.
A good decision by Dax on the first punt of the game where it goes over his head and in for a touchback. And again, like I mentioned, Bryson Tremaine playing gunner, like that was good to see that. He showed that in the joint practice too. So, guys, I think are doing good stuff.
Yeah. All right, we'll be back later this week with some thoughts on practice when they get back to it on Wednesday, and then obviously a preview of the game and who we think is on the bubble on Friday or on Saturday for the game against Cincinnati. That's it, and that's all for Take Command, and we will see you later in the week. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. First, why don't you like it? It lets other people know that it was good, and then they should watch it too. And Logan, we have a new exclusive home for full episodes.
We do. 1067 The Fans YouTube page. Go check it out and please subscribe.
Yeah, do what Logan said.
Do it.
Very, very smart.